Thank you, Ben. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our 7th of January Shadow Executive meeting. Now, I've been informed by Ben that I've got Councillor Stamborough would like to talk to items 5, 9, 10 and 11, and that Councillor Victoria Perry, Vice Chair on behalf of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, would like to talk to item 10. Are there any other notifications?
Chair, for Councillor Stamborough, it is now just 5, 9 and 10. So he's withdrawn his request to speak. I
didn't mention 7, I've already got, but thank you very much for reminding me. Okay. Are there any declarations of interest from members? If you think of anything during the meeting, put your hand up. Minutes of the meeting held on these. That can't be right.
I think you've missed the page, leader.
Sorry?
You may have missed reminding everyone about microphones, and this is a recorded meeting.
I've got here minutes of the meeting held on 7th of December. Oh, yeah, 7th of December. The minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of December 2020 are set out on pages 5 and 14 of the agenda pack. Are they a true recollection, reference of what was said and agreed?
Yeah, happy to propose those, Chair.
Thank you. Ian Jelly proposes. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Stephen. Everybody content with that? It'll take me a little while to get going again after the holiday. Agenda item 5, transformation director's update. But I'd like to welcome Councillor Chris Stamborough to address the meeting on this item.
Okay, Chris, we're ready to take your statement now.
Yeah, done the interest. Yeah. Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Chris. Happy New Year. Off you go.
Okay, what is it you wanted me to talk about then? Because I'm behind you on YouTube, so I don't know where you've got to.
Well, I've been told that you want to talk on item 5, 9, 10 and 11.
So you want
we're on item 5. So
right, you're on item 5 now, are you? Oh, good, right. Okay then. So what I wanted to talk about on item 5, which is the various reports that you get around programme status, is the financial monitoring report there. Now I've got a question which officers may or may not be able to answer, but it's a fairly simple one, so I hope they can. Regarding item BRR09, Adults Review of Target Operating Model, it shows savings of £14 million over the period. Are those savings gross or net? And if they're net, what's the gross figure? That's the first question. And the second one is more of a point, really. Once again, you've got columns headed 2021 to 24 in the various tables at the appendix, showing no breakdown of the figures for those years. Those breakdowns must surely be available now because both authorities have published budgets. So it would be really helpful and transparent and informative if those figures were broken down to the individual years 21, 22, 22, 23 and 23, 24. I'm sure members of the executive would agree that that would be a helpful thing to do. So if this report is going to be an ongoing thing, perhaps next time that's how it could be presented. So that was it, just that question and that point. Thank you, Chair.
Right, well, I'll see you in a little while, and I'm sure the officers will give you some feedback on that.
Let's hope so.
I'm sure they will. Right, okay. Thank you. Right, I'd now like to ask Lisa Hyde, Director of Transformation, to introduce this report, please. Mindful of the questions that were asked by Councillor Stamborough.
Thank you, Chair, of course, and I'll go through the slides and then Glenn also will be coming in to talk about the financial position, so we'll pick those up at that point if that's okay. So I'll run through in the order that we've got on the agenda. Thank you, Chair. So I'll refer you to the slides. If you could put the slides up and move to the programme status summary. Move to the, there we go, brilliant. Thank you very much. So as you will see, and as expected, you will see the overall programme status. This stage is as at the 30th of November, a little bit later due to the Christmas break that you would usually be used to. And that status is broken down as usual by each individual programme. Many programmes, as you'll see during this period, were at an amber status with an expected direction travel of amber through December. Members, we're now less than 60 working days from vesting day. And for that reason, we are now very much into a much more agile working phase where we need to respond and address key issues and actions almost on a day-to-day focus. And our focus is very much now on really not necessarily what we've done, but moving forward and what we have yet to do in that remaining 60 working days. So many of the risks outlined in the commentary tonight have or are being addressed quite rapidly. You will see that many programmes refer particularly to issues around ensuring where NCC services and systems are accessed, where we need to mitigate against potential data access and data sharing breaches. This is referenced in both the corporate programme, the ICT and the Green Adults one at this point. So just to reassure that we are talking to the Information Commissioner's Office with regard to our mitigations to ensure they are effective and appropriate. Moving to the finance part of the programme, the definition of close down, I just wanted to be clear here, is referred to for finance is a very different one. It's not referring to the close down of the sovereign authorities per se, but the close down of the financial accounts of the sovereign authorities. And clearly work will be required well past vesting day for the close down of those accounts. And it is important that pre-vesting day we have systems and resource in place to ensure that happens. As I've mentioned in previous reports, the corporate work stream risks remain amber. We work with NCC staff to split functions and roles north and west, and the associated requirements for the system, the ERP system as it refers to there, to ensure staff records, HR information are transferred correctly. In addition, we're also working very hard on the necessary service level agreements or inter-authority agreements between the North and West for those hosted services that are scoped and appropriate for the size and the scale of the service, but also the period of time that those services are hosted. In children's, the structure for disaggregation of education has been agreed, a particular challenge where we have very, very small numbers of staff working in quite specialist areas. We're still in the stabilisation phase with the Children's Trust, and a process of agreeing support services with them is underway. So this remains at amber. We can move to the next slide. A couple of things I just want to pull out and highlight on this slide. So again, the 60 day, we are pulling in extra resources in this lead up to vesting day and required for post vesting day during what we will be calling the stabilisation phase. We are setting up a small group of staff in the North to work as a small rapid response team for customers and for staff and for yourself as members, so that in that last couple of weeks of March through vesting day and into those first few weeks, and we've been advised this is good practice from other organisations that have gone through this unitary process, to make sure you've got key contact points. We ensure we're solution focused for any issues that may arise during that critical time. And we're working with to identify a project manager for this role in the next few weeks to get that process underway. In addition, in terms of resources, we have today launched a consultation process with the trade unions on the transformation team staffing, the structures for North and West, so that we can give clarity to those staff who at the moment on the Future Northants programme, many of which are seconded from the existing sovereign districts and boroughs or NCC or are on fixed term contracts. So we've started that process today and we'll be working through that to ensure that we've got staff, again, working and assured and got some clarification on what their roles are over that vesting day period and into the new North and both the West authorities. Next slide, please. We can go right through to the change managers update, please. And the next one. There we go. Thank you. So these slides just talk through some of the change champions and change manager activity that you've been seeing over the past few months, but we've changed the focus. You've been used to seeing some numbers around how many change champions we've got through the organisation. I think we're now moving forward to make sure that what we see is that those change champions are being effective and what they're doing, and we're going to give you some more detail around the outcomes and the impact of that work. So this slide very much outlines the actions that the change managers are doing, the work they're undertaking, but particularly the impact that's achieved over the last month. These roles are about supporting our employees through significant and complex change programs, particularly using new ICT, increasing the awareness of the process of creating the two new authorities, ensuring communication channels are open and two-way, and making sure that staff are involved in that service transformation process. And this slide gives you some very detailed information about where that's happening and where that impact has been achieved. Moving to the next slide, please. And just to pick a bit more change champion activity here and a few highlights. Myself, and you'll be aware, Jane Carr, who is the Transformation Director for the West, have now been working with the Change Champions on what we're calling our winter series of Gearing Up for Change workshops. They're virtual, of course, and really important because this is what keeps the contact of those staff out there, and to reassure members that that contact is being retained, even though we are back in this virtual work framework across the whole of Northamptonshire again. And it's really important. It's given the people the opportunity to ask us questions directly about the programme. And again, what we're seeing is lots of questions around IT changes and adoption, and they are some of the key areas where staff are needing support and where we're targeting that support and to ensure their involvement and engagement. And similarly, Teresa, as the Strategic Delivery Director, has also done a live Q&A with staff since we last met, with around 125 change champions logging into that call and being able to ask Teresa directly questions and get some of those some of those answers straight away. So again, that's been a really effective way of communicating with those change champions and then being the advocates in those organisations, taking those messages back to all the staff. Thank you. If you just move to the next slide, please. And then again, another different way of producing this information, but to be absolutely clear that that feedback that we're getting from staff is changing the way that we work and having an effect on what we're doing moving forward. Two particular areas I think we pull out here where, not surprisingly, the work that we're doing around tiers 1 to 3 have brought out some key issues during that. Particularly around making sure that staff are still engaged through that process, but also in terms of making sure that in that knowledge that's then of subject matters that those tier 1 to 3 staff have got, and make sure that we can still draw on that, and that we're reassuring them that they're greater understanding of that support available for those staff through this process, through HR, and to give them that clarity as we move forward. Next slide, please. So communications and engagement, quite a lot of things there on one topic. We are doing quite a lot of work now. As I say, we're moving into this final few months, and we've got the new logos are published, as you'll be aware. We're doing a lot of work around using videos for presentations to staff. You might have seen the videos with Anna and Rob there to getting those out so people can start to feel the culture of the organisations going forward. We're also seeing quite a change in the fact that the comms will now split in this new year between North and West. So you start to get a different feel of some of that comms as well. And our comms staff in the North are now working very much as a hub, which will be really important going forward to make sure that we've got communications resilience, and also to make sure that we've got some absolutely joined up messages going out from all of our comms staff across Northamptonshire. We're also working very hard and have pulled together a plan for our external communication tools going forward over the next few months, and I'm sure you as members will be interested, and absolutely in terms of that day one readiness campaign, so that we can reassure our customers in terms of what those services are and what those changes are. And we're now starting to get to a point where we're working on the rebranding of the website. So we're starting to see some the work's being pulled together on that, the rebranding of the websites, and also those areas that will be required for rebranding all of our buildings and facilities. So the things that we call our priority one areas where we need to rebrand during February and March, ready for the new authority. That are my slides, Chair. We're now moving on to the finance, but I'm happy to take any questions at this stage, or if we want to go through to the finance and do that at the end there.
I've got Jean would like to ask you a question. Jean?
Jean, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. I asked this question because we've got audit and governance next week at Corby, where we will be speaking to the external auditors. On a scale of 1 to 10, what will be the impact on the new council going forward if the Sovereign Council's accounts are not finalised by vesting day?
Sorry,
Want me to answer that, Lisa?
Sorry, I thought it was on mute, but Janice, if you wanted to come through in on that, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the main impact, if it's not finalised, will obviously be that it'll still remain uncertain until the accounts have signed off for any potential adjustments that may come through following audit. So it's about uncertainty as much as it is anything else, because hopefully all the transactions have been done and in place. It's just waiting for that final sign off from audit to certify those arrangements.
Thank you for that, Janice. I've got nobody else indicating they want to speak. So do you want to? Oh, I do beg your pardon.
Thank you. I just wanted
Jason.
to thank Lisa, really. It was good to hear that communications are being controlled over here in the north now for the North Unitary. It's so important that we get the comms right on this. We live it day in, day out, as well do officers, obviously, are living this in minute by the day, I would say. But it's crucial that we bring the public along with this, and you know, ultimately that's why we're doing this, is to give the public a better source of local government. So comms are really important, and bringing the public along, and if we can get those comms out, you know, on a regular basis to advise the local residents what we're doing and where we're doing it, I think that would be a positive for this project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think from the February meeting, we'll have a bit more focus on the detail of that as well, so you can see some of that as well. Thank you.
Rob, did you want to?
Yeah, I think Jason makes a really good point. I think hopefully members will have seen that the first communication has gone out, as we're now less than 90 days away from vesting day. So a communication went out today, which should mean as we can, and we will continue to ramp that up over the coming weeks and months as we get nearer to the 1st of April.
Good. I think we're all relieved that we're going to be talking to our people with our own comms. If nobody else has got any questions, Lisa, I think we can safely move on.
Move to the finance.
Please.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, the finance report that you've got in front of you this evening is showing the latest financial position for the Future Northants programme for the current financial year. You will note that the investment budget is showing a favourable variance of £190,000. That is due to, now we've had confirmation of all of the statutory and director roles and the start dates of employees. Those start dates were, from a financial perspective, a little bit later in the year than was originally planned within the budget. So that's the reason for the favourable variance there. In terms of the benefits realisation, there has been some slippage, and there is an adverse variance for the current financial year of just over £1 million on the realisation of those benefits. During the last month, there's been further slippage on a number of children's and adults benefits, which are set out within the report. They are due to those delays as a result of the COVID pandemic. And the change for this month is a further increase in the adverse variance of just over 460,000. It is worth noting that those savings are still expected to be achieved, just not in the current financial year, but in future financial years. And on that note, there has been a lot of work undertaken looking at those benefits and making sure that they are factored into Northamptonshire's budget for next year, and also over the medium term as well. And the latest position on all of those is reflected within the budget update report that you'll be looking at later on the agenda. And we'll also continue to review those ahead of the final budget in February. It is worth noting that there remains some considerable risk regarding the outturn position for the future Northants programme, and things may change further, particularly as we've had the further pressures around COVID-19 and also the impacts on the recovery in terms of the economy as well. But it is worth reminding members that by the end of this financial year, we will have delivered almost £50 million of the £84 million that is planned to come out of the Future Northants programme from a benefits perspective. So there is positive progress that has been delivered there. If I could finally just respond to the questions that Councillor Stamborough raised. The first one was with regards to the £14 million proposal regarding the review of the target operating model within adults. I think that's a question that's possibly been raised previously as well. And I seem to recall that the position is a net figure after investment costs. But I will confirm that with the service and respond directly to Councillor Stamborough. In terms of the medium term breakdown of the figures, note what Councillor Stamborough said, and we'll provide the split of those over those years for him. I can assure members and Councillor Stamborough that the savings that have been reflected into the budget and for Northamptonshire, and also the medium-term financial plan for Northamptonshire, have been allocated and split over each of the financial years. If there are any further questions, more than happy to answer them. I note that David Watts has got his hand up.
I was going to say David Watts would like to ask you something, Glenn, and then Stephen North. So David.
Thank you, Chair. No, it's actually to agree with Glenn's comment with regards to that being a net position on savings. So to confirm, the way that's been explained to me is that each saving is not taken in isolation. You have to understand the impacts of, for example, providing additional domiciliary care. There's an additional cost to that, but if you're reducing the amount of people that are in residential care, you obviously have to make that investment. So that is a net position.
Thank you for that, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Glenn, you mentioned a couple of times in relation to the pressures and variances that have appeared due to COVID and the pressures we're all facing. Obviously, we all appreciate that the government have given a number of grants to councils, not just for outfacing losses, but for internal losses as well, to cover some of those losses to sovereign councils. Are any of those funds that are going to sovereign councils going to be put into the local government programme to pick up some of these variances that have come out due to impact from COVID?
The approach that's been taken with regard to the reporting here is to be as transparent as possible and identify where those savings are being reduced in the current year and going into future years. What the sovereign councils will be doing within their own budgets in the current year is looking to offset those reductions in savings from the funding that government has provided. So this is about transparency of reporting financially within the Future Northants programme.
Has anybody else got any questions or anything they want to say on this? I think we're then done. Nobody else got anything they want to say?
Before we just move on, Martin Griffiths has just texted me and wants his apologies noted for the meeting. It's feeling a lot better and he's actually watching us on YouTube. So I'm sure
well, that's
you'll,
good news.
Yeah, see that as good news. And
yeah.
if we could just note his
Duly
apologies.
Noted. Good. That is excellent news. Okay. So if nobody's got anything they want to say, could I have a mover, please? Somebody move.
I'm happy to move, Chair.
Thank you, Wendy. And a seconder?
Happy to second, Chair. Councillor Jelly.
Thank you very much. Are you content? Show of hands. Keep your hands up so that Ben can do his magic.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Great. We now come to item 6, the assets, capital schemes and reserves notification process. And I'm looking for Janice Gotts, who's going to talk to this report. She's the Executive Director of Finance.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. I also note that both Sophie and Ian are also in attendance today as well to support on the report if necessary. So just to give a little bit of brief background, the notification process allows for discussions to be had about proposals from the existing sovereign councils regarding any change to assets, capital schemes or use of reserves outside of those that are planned, subject to a de minimis level of around about £100,000, which is part of the scheme. Now, this scheme was originally approved in June 2020, and this report just proposes a couple of minor changes to that process. Firstly, regarding consideration of the workforce and HR sections that are set out in the change freeze document. And essentially that's looking at the most recent one, for instance, is about freezing the establishment at the 1st of December position, and also looking about any extensions and things like that, just to make sure that we're in a stable position when we move over to the new authorities on vesting day. And secondly, extending it to include leasing of assets and licenses to occupy assets. So I think that, and there is actually a final change to remove the word interim following the appointment of the permanent chief execs. So that is the other minor change on there. This process is also being replicated in the West Northamptonshire as well. So, but as part of this report, there are a couple of schemes which do require notification. The first one is the granting of a 99-year lease of the Green Patch in Kettering to Groundwork Northamptonshire. And this will enable Groundwork Northamptonshire to continue to use the land as a community market garden and also a small holding. That has been approved by Kettering Borough Council at their meeting on the 9th of December. And the second one is the Shire Lodge Cemetery Extension in Corby. That requires an increase in the capital programme for Corby of 870,000 to be funded through the use of reserves. But what that will do will enable increased space in the cemetery to support a period of 25 to 30 years. And without that increase, we would have had issues with the space over, I think, the next 18 to 24 months. So that proposal actually went to Corby Policy Committee meeting on the 1st December 2020. And that's it. Thank you, Chair. If there's any questions.
Has anybody got any questions or any comments to make? I can see nobody. Oh, yep, I've got Ian Jelly, Councillor Ian Jelly.
Unmute yourself. Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and thanks, Janice, for that report. I'm happy to go ahead with both of these. I personally know the Green Patch, and I've been down there myself with fellow councillors and understand the amount of work they do for local people and for some underprivileged people as well. So it's a really good system they've got going down there. And, you know, we've been as supportive as we can as a sovereign council, and I think it's a really good project, and I'm very happy to support that. And certainly with the Shire Lodge Cemetery, I mean, the situation there is that in a stage where they have no further room. We have had some of this reported to the Joint Street Scene Services, which I chair at the moment, and I think it's a great project, and it's necessary, and I'm very supportive of that as well. So I'm very happy to propose this report, Chair, and hope somebody will second it. So.
Let me get Stephen North to make his comments first. I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. No, I was just going to support Ian's comments. I've had the opportunity to go to the Green Patch site myself and have a tour around last year, and it is great and very supportive of that. I think things like the groundwork are doing, and all we're going to need in support of mental health and well-being in the coming years after this COVID is very much welcome, and I'm happy to support or second the both on block, Chair, to support Ian's recommendation. I'm very, very supportive of the Green Patch.
Thank you. Well, we've got a proposer and a seconder. Has anybody else got anything they want to say before we go to the vote? I've got nobody showing up, right? So we have a proposer and seconder. Can we have a show of hands, please? And can you keep your hands up so that Ben can count them up?
Unanimous, Chair.
That's unanimous. Thank you. We now come to item 7, blueprint change requests. I believe that Councillor Stamber isn't talking to this report, so we'll go straight to, I'd like to invite Katie Brown, Acting Director of Adult Social Care, to introduce this.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm here with a number of colleagues from NCC, so I will be taking the adults ones. I'm assuming that everybody has had the opportunity to read them, because obviously there are quite a few. Just in summary, these are very small functions of adult social care that sit within some of the subset of the bigger blueprint disaggregations, where there are very specific reasons why we aren't able to disaggregate at this time. They are for 3 key reasons. One, they are very specialist statutory function, and there is a national recruitment crisis, particularly with adult mental health practitioners and best interest assessors for DOLs, and therefore it would put at risk the statutory ability of both councils to deliver that service if we split it because of the size of the teams. For a couple of the others, which is assistive technology, because of the transformation work that needs to be done with the districts and boroughs, lifeline services, we have proposed that we do that transformation piece of work early into the unitary councils, and therefore that gives the opportunity to not have to further invest in those services, but actually use the existing resources to cross-skill up different teams to bring together to make that sustainable for both unitaries. Shared Lives is a very small team of 6 that support what is the equivalent of adult fostering. They have approximately 80 placements. That would also require further investment, but there is opportunity to transform that in terms of how that is embedded in other adult social care functions and community and housing. Visual impairment is another specialist function. There are a team of 2. It's a very specialist provision. You have to have a very particular degree, and obviously 2 we can't split into 2 because there is no resilience. And the PBSS service, they're a small team that do holding accounts for people that have direct payments. They hold approximately 900 accounts. And what you'll find for these, so if I go through them, sorry, Shared Lives, we're proposing to be hosted in the West, visual impairment in the West, assistive technology in the West, and all of the others in the North. In total, out of the staff, if you think, although that sounds like a lot of teams, there are less than 50, and that is out of a workforce of just over 1,600. And we have fed into both transformation directors and obviously discussions with the new DASs about to make sure that those things are then progressed in terms of transformation very early on in the process. If I'm happy to take any questions about any of those services.
I don't see anybody requesting to speak at the moment. But thank you very much for that. What I'll do is if somebody thinks of something they want to say, we'll come back to you. But thank you for that, Katie. We'll go to Martin Cox, who's doing Appendix 8, I believe. Martin.
Evening, members. I'm here to introduce the change request for the HR Traded Services. This is again a small service of 3 that we offer to our schools on a traded basis to give them an option to have a local authority-based HR service as opposed to just purely relying on a commercial market. But of course we sell it on an academic year as well, so we sell it ahead, so it will go over the effective vesting day of our new council. So the proposal here is not only just to meet the existing commitments we have, but also to give North Northamptonshire and West Northamptonshire the opportunity to consider how they want to offer services to our schools in future. They may wish to go further, invest further, they may wish to withdraw and allow the market. So this is just a case of keeping our current commitments and ensuring we deliver what our commercial arrangements with our schools, but also giving time to ourselves and colleagues in the West Northamptonshire to decide their future strategy. It's hosted for 12 months, at which point then whatever proposals happen will be enacted. That's all I wanted to say on that, Chair.
Thank you, Martin. I've got no questions, so I'm going to ask Graham Kane to do the honours on the appendices 9 and 10, I believe.
That's right. Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much. Good evening. Yeah, so 2 small teams, adoptions, highways adoptions and section 106. The rationale is fairly straightforward and in line with many of what you've heard this evening already, is that we're talking about small teams here who do complicated pieces of work. We feel that resilience would be undermined if we try to divide them on day one. They work very independently with each other. So what we're recommending within the teams, that is, what we're recommending is that the highways adoptions team stays with the West or goes to the West along with the other highways functions that are there. And the section 106, which is just 2 individuals, goes to the North for the time being. But of course, that gives both unitaries the opportunity to think about how they want these functions to work alongside of some of the other functions that they will obviously have in the unitaries. Clearly, the districts and boroughs are contributing their other section 106 officers and resources. So there's a consideration to be done about how we align those resources for the future. So that's a piece of work that can happen after day one. So that's the recommendation with highways adoptions in section 106, colleagues. And then there's also the community liaison officers who are also related to the highways function. These, as the name suggests, these are individuals who are out and about within local areas, liaising with residents and parish councils and district, borough and county councillors to identify works that need to be done and then to make sure those works get done. They tend to look after individual patches, as you would imagine, so they get to know the geography and the individuals within that geography. What we're suggesting here is that really, in order for the community liaison officers to be able to instruct the contractor, which is in this case Kier WSP, they really need to be employed by the contracting authority, which is the West. So they will be employed by the West. However, they will still look after the individual patches, which they by and large cover now. So for instance, the community liaison officers which cover areas within North will carry on covering areas in the North and be loyal and committed to their area that they cover. It just from a technical point of view, they need to be employed by the contracting authority, which is the West, so that they can instruct the contractor to carry out works. So that's the logic there. And again, we would align that with the current highways contracts. So that would all change when we had a new contract in place. I hope that's helpful, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. I've got nobody at the moment showing that they want to ask you any questions. So I'll go smoothly on to Kathy Hadley, who's going to talk about appendices 11.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is a change request for the Information Advice and Support Service. It provides impartial and confidential service to parents and carers, free information, advice and supports and matters relating to the educational special needs and disabilities. The service operates arm's length at the local authority and the clinical commissioning groups. In the original blueprint, it was disaggregated so it'd be serving the west and the north. However, to retain some impartiality of the function, it is considered that it perhaps should sit in the ICF function, which is the intelligent client function, where the services actually monitor and oversee the commissioning of the Children's Trust. The thinking is the service would be hosted in the north for a period of 12 months and serve both north and west and meet the needs of both north and west parents and carers.
Thank you for that, Kathy. I've got nobody wishing to say anything about this, so could I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I'm happy to move, Chair. All the changes seem very logical.
Yeah, good. Ms. Wendy is the mover. Can I have a seconder, please?
Seconder, Chair. Quite happy.
Stephen seconds. Could I have a show of hands?
Sorry, that's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. That's unanimous. We'll now move on to item 8, update on draft budget 2021-22 and medium-term financial plan. Now, I don't believe there's any speakers on this either. No, I'm just double checking. So I'd like to welcome Janice Gotts back to talk about this, the money.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, so this is an update to the budget. As you know, there was a draft budget report that was presented to Shadow Executive in December. That showed a gap of £10 million at the time, and that was subject to the local government finance settlement that we have now received on the 17th of December. So what this report does, it updates the financial position for the local government finance settlement, and also any other mitigations that we've been working on to close that gap and balance the budget. So, and I think probably just the thing to point out when looking at the local government funding settlement, that the government funding does assume that councils will apply the precept in full when they are looking at the arrangements for funding for local authorities. So just to go through the paper, as it outlines, the settlement did confirm a number of areas that we'd already included as part of the original draft budget and what was set out in the spending review earlier in November. We've also got some additional funding that's come through. So overall, we've had a net benefit of around about £2 million following the finance settlement that's outlined under paragraph 5.37 of the report. This relates predominantly to increases in new homes bonus and COVID funding, and also a new grant that we were unaware of at the time of the spending review, which is the lower tier services grant. This has been offset by lower than expected revenue support grant funding, and also the allocation of the social care grant. The latter is due to the weighting being greater than we'd anticipated going towards the equalisation based on each council's ability to raise their council tax precept for adult social care. The remaining £8 million gap, after taking into account that improved position following the settlement, has been met through a number of areas. These are namely improvements to the disaggregation of the county budgets. That's following a review of the adult social care data set, and also changes to the block bed contract, bringing that in-house. That's improved the position by £1.7 million. There's also around just over £500,000, in fact, savings in the forecast cost of elections, and that includes freeing up just over £0.4 million worth of reserves. We've got an improvement to the collection fund, in total of 4.2 million. That includes changes both to the assumed deficit position being brought forward on the collection fund, as well as some indexation and also some improvement on the forecast position for business rates next year, which, based on the latest data, is holding up more strongly than originally thought. And following that, we've had further use of reserves to balance the position of £1.5 million. And we're going to use that predominantly to offset one-off costs in relation to COVID that are coming through onto the budget. So that's taken the total use of reserves to just under £2 million for the year. Talking of reserves, the report does also now outline the forecast reserves for the authority as at April 21. Now, these will undoubtedly continue to change as we move towards year end and will be subject to audit. But what we'll do for the next report in February, we'll set out those reserves and also the anticipated movement in those reserves, both in 21, 22 and in future years. We're aware of that, just to give that fuller position on the reserves. And within the report as well, we also do mention briefly the ring fence dedicated school grant. It's slightly higher than was assumed in the provisional settlement because there's been a longer term settlement position for funding for schools. The increase is coming in mainly in the schools block and the early years block. Again, full details of the final DSG will be taken to February executive, and consultations will take place with schools and the schools forums on the issues around school funding, as you'd expect. And finally, the report also sets out the forecast for the medium term. It does show a challenging position for the next 3 years. It makes a number of assumptions around funding allocations, particularly following business rates reform and business rates reset, which will impact on the growth that the authority has previously been able to retain within its budget. But also it does note the uncertainty regarding changes to other major areas of funding, including new homes bonus, social care funding and what will be the long-term implications for that or solutions for that, and the general funding mechanism as part of the fair funding review and understanding what our allocations will be as part of that. So the council will continue to seek to transform services to create improvements and deliver efficiencies, and that's absolutely critical, and that is something that is a driving force behind this. But we'll be working with residents, business and partners again to do this and help take that forward, and that's what we'll be looking for within the medium term, and obviously we'll bring back future plans at that point in time. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. That was very comprehensive. Stephen North would like to ask a question or make a comment. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. And just a comment, not necessarily a question today. And it'd be brief because obviously it's an interim report. I just certainly would like to thank obviously Janice and all the team for all the work they've done and actually bringing us to a balanced position. Yeah, as you would expect me to say, Chair. I mean, obviously concerned that we're having to use reserves to get to that point. But considering where we are, then where we were, then you know that's what we've had to do. And I think it's interesting today, and I didn't pick it up in the report, so it might be I might have missed it, or could be emphasised a bit more next time in the fact that you know the use of reserves we're doing is obviously COVID funding that we've actually put into reserves, and that to pick up the COVID pressures in the base budget, and there's a logic to that, and that's welcome in that respect, and that's not the same as just using general reserves to balance the book. So if I missed the paragraph, apologies, but if it isn't in there, and I very much pick up on your comments today, it might be worth emphasising that next time, because I think that puts a slightly different bent on the whole thing. I think as ever, Chair, you know, it would be nice to start on a better footing with government support, because my concern, as you know, is the medium to long term. We can do excellent amounts of transformation, but that takes time. And it's not just about making efficiencies, of course, it's about improving services, and sometimes that's going to cost more. So my concern, as ever, is the medium to long term, because it'd be nice to start on a good footing, to be able to have the time to do proper transformation and deliver better services for our residents. And at the moment, it's looking very tight, and we don't want to struggle for 4 years, which is my view. So if we can get some more government support, that would be very much welcome, but very much welcome all the hard work that's been done up to date. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Ian. And I believe, Janice, you agreed with the point made on the reserves.
Absolutely, Chair, and thank you, Councillor. You're quite right. Yes, there will be COVID capacity carried forward as part of those reserves, and it should have been further stressed in the report. It does mention about meeting one-off COVID cost is the priority use of that, but we will have such reserves that will be able to build up to be able to allow us to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Janice. Tom Beattie would like to say something. Tom?
Unmute. Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's more of a comment, I think, and that's the disappointment I think I feel from the local government finance settlement. There was maybe hope rather than expectation that we might have done better out of the finance settlement than we actually did. The additional £2 million or so that Janice has referred to really isn't new money. I mean, at all. We're looking at things like a new homes bonus, which we would have had. It's expected that we will raise council tax to the maximum, 4.99%, including the social care precept. It seems like all the way through this process, we have had lots of warm words from government ministers, various secretaries of state, from James Brokenshire, Sajid Javid, you name them. Civil servants have given us warm words, but warm words aren't enough, and we haven't seen any additional funding. So the money that we're raising, the additional spending power, which the government are quite keen to talk about, is indeed spending power which is increased by increasing the burden of tax on our residents, and that's how this is being paid for. I mean, I know we're still in discussions with government ministers about any future support that may be available. I mean, I would just urge people not to get too excited at the prospect of a minister riding over the hill on a white charger to help us. It hasn't happened so far, and I don't think it's going to happen in the future. So I think this is something I'll return to also when we get to discuss the item further up the agenda, which is about the council tax support scheme. But just disappointment really that the local government finance settlement, in my view, was nothing more than smoke and mirrors, and there was very little in that for us, and that was hugely disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Tom. I've got
Russell,
Ian Jelly.
Russell, would it be possible for me to just come back to on Councillor Beattie on the point around the MHCLG? I think, Councillor Beattie, you're right to raise those points. I think what we can share with you today, and I think some colleagues who are on this meeting today may have been involved in some sessions, and you may well have seen something in the Local Government Chronicle that the MHCLG are hoping to make some announcements publicly in the next few weeks regarding exceptional support to local authorities over and above what was in the settlement. Now, whether or not we are going to be beneficiaries of that, we've got to hope that with the conversations we've been having with them, like other councils, that we will do. So I do agree that it is disappointing that wasn't part of what came out pre-Christmas, but let's hope that we are recognised for some of the things we've been talking to them about in the next few weeks, and obviously before you as a shadow authority approve the final budget.
Right,
thanks, Rob.
Let's hope that's hopeful. Is that okay, Tom? Did you want to come back in anyway in that?
No, that's fine, Russell, and thank you, Rob, for that update. That's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Jelly. Ian?
Yeah, very much, Chair, and thank you, Rob. And I echo very much what Tom Beattie and Stephen North said about this, and the promises and support we've promised in the past really hasn't materialised. But I would like to thank Janice, team and everybody involved for on the budget. I feel very confident that we can take this through as a balanced budget. We do have the uncertainty going forward and the pressures on the medium-term financial plan. From the spending review, there's obviously areas within the budget report, such as local council tax support grant, that we're still waiting for clarification how that will be rolled out to local government in the future. But I think all in all, you know, we're in a good place, certainly on this budget. But I said, you know, we've got to err on the caution of the fact that the medium term is going to be a lot more difficult. And just to remind members and anybody watching on YouTube or how we get the message out, that the consultation on the budget is still running until the 29th of January. So for residents, stakeholders, whoever, you know, take the opportunity, go onto the website and have your say or put your point over for the budget consultation, and it ends on the 29th of January. But all in all, I'm very pleased with the way things are going, and but challenging times ahead, I'm afraid, Chair. But very happy to propose this report, and again, thank Janice and the team for everything they've done to get us where we are today. Thank you.
No, thank you. I've got nobody else indicating they want to speak. So I've got a proposer. Could I have a seconder? Stephen North seconds. Could I have a show of hands, please?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Right, we now come to item 9, I believe, which is the housing revenue account. And I do believe we have Councillor Stamborough coming in to talk to us.
He's just coming back into the room. Councillor Stamborough, if you would like to make your address regarding the housing revenue account item.
Certainly can do. Thank you very much, everybody. So, having read the report, the thing that sort of jumped out at me was that there were no proposals in the report for any efficiencies in the housing revenue account. Now, there surely must be some opportunities for efficiencies. Not even wonderful councils like Corby Borough Council and Kettering Borough Council run a perfect operation that doesn't present some opportunities from time to time, especially when you read in Appendix A that across the two accounts, there's the expenditure on general management is some £8 million or nearly £8 million a year. Now, if there were some savings to be identified, these could obviously be reinvested to benefit tenants, to improve the properties they live in, to improve their lives. And I think that would be a good thing. One area where some investment could be made is in the area of what is known as microgeneration. Some people might know of it as things like solar panels. There is some recognition that such things are good things. We read in paragraph 410 of the report about a development in the Hampden Crescent site having air source heat pumps being used. So clearly there's a recognition that such things can be good. And one of the many good things about such things is, of course, they are green, but they also put money back into the pockets of council tenants. And that's also got to be a good thing, hasn't it? Because when we're talking about people who have to, for instance, if they're claiming local council tax support, and some of them will be faced with extra bills, you know, to put money back into their pockets has got to be a good thing. So I would hope that when you look at the capital programme, you might ask whether there's the opportunity to add a project to start retrofitting solar panels or other microgeneration projects to council-owned properties to benefit council tenants. And if there's no money available to pay for that from capital resources, I'm sure there are opportunities for efficiency savings to part finance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you, Chris.
If you'd like to continue, Chair.
Right, Janice Scott.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep this brief because it's quite a comprehensive report that has been written by Mark Dickinson, who's also here. Essentially, the report sets out the medium-term financial position for a single HRA for Northamptonshire. However, initially within that, we will be seeing 2 neighbourhood accounts for the stock that was previously managed by Corby Council and also by Kettering, amounting to around about spending income of about £35 million taken together. The report also sets out the proposals regarding rent increases of an average of 1.7% for each of the neighbourhood counts. This is based on the Consumer Price Index as at September 2020 plus 1%, and that's in line with government guidance for rent increases. And just to point out as well, obviously that is, I think that's been agreed for around about a period of 5 years, that mechanism to be in place. But that does follow on of a previous period of that of 4 years, where obviously saw rent decreases of 1% per annum as well. Now, information on the HRA capital budget is also included, but I think it should be noted that these are subject to a separate report on the capital. So it's in there for information to provide the context and the fuller picture for the HRA, but it is also part of the capital programme report that goes separately through to executive. And the draft was already presented to Shadow Executive in December as well, and is also forming part of the consultation that's out with residents at the moment. The next step will be the engagement with tenants and tenants forum representatives, and bringing back the findings to support the final recommendations to executive in December. So obviously keen as always to hear the comments of tenants around the proposals within the budget. Just in relation to what Councillor Stambra said, yes, in regards no proposals for efficiencies, I think the report identifies that the keenness for the HRA is to actually make it safe and legal and make sure that it's in a place to be operated effectively for tenants for their service provision from the 1st of April. And I also think probably with the HRA, it's incredibly difficult year with COVID. Around looking about efficiencies and how services can be run properly, because I don't think we've probably got to a proper year, but hopefully bringing the 2 neighbourhood accounts together under a single HRA and looking at that in the longer term, that should be when we should be able to start to look for those greater efficiencies across the piece. And obviously I think that the comments are made about some of the capital issues around retrofitting. There obviously is further work being taken forward with the climate change task and finish group, and I think perhaps that's a place to raise that and consider that as part of the further thinking going forward. Thank you, Chair.
I think that's a constant thing that we're doing anyway, but thank you for pointing it out. Has anybody got anything they want to say? If not, then could I have a mover, please? Tom Beattie moves. A seconder?
Second that, Chairman.
Marvellous, Tom. The other Tom?
Two Toms.
Wonderful. Can we have a show of hands, please?
Again, Chair, that's unanimous.
Thank you very much. We now come to agenda item 10, Local Council Tax Support Scheme. And I believe we have Councillor Stambra back in the room.
And we also have Councillor Perry.
And we do have Councillor Perry. I'm going to introduce her later.
Councillor Stambra, if you would like to make your statement on the Local Council Tax Support Scheme.
Absolutely, thank you very much. So firstly, I want to refer you to paragraph 3.6 of the report and the first bullet point there, which talks about the recommendations from the working group and specifically the one around a 25% scheme. So that wasn't a unanimous view of the working group, the task and finish group. I was certainly in favour of proposing a lower amount, and there was at least one other member who had qualms about the 25%. So just wanted to make sure that you understood that. What's disappointing about this report is that in approving, as I think you probably will do, a 25% scheme and asking tenants in Corby, for instance, to pay, who are in receipt of local council tax support, 3 times as much as they are currently paying. There is no proposal for a discretionary fund to help people who get into difficulties with that large jump in the amount of council tax that they're going to have to pay. There is reference in the report to lots of good things that we will do to help them, supporting them with benefit claims, giving advice on utility grants, all sorts of other things. And we should be doing those things anyway, but none of those put hard cash directly into the pockets of the people who are struggling, whereas a discretionary fund would do exactly that. I think it is something that ought to be considered, that ought to be in place, maybe not as a long-term thing, but certainly something to smooth the transition, because for some people it's going to be very, very difficult to find the money. And I would strongly urge that you give consideration to that particular option when putting the scheme in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We'll just let Chris go out into the waiting room, and then we'll bring Councillor Victoria Perry.
Hello. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm here speaking not so much as myself, but on behalf of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As a committee, we weren't really sure how our findings were feeding into the executive. So what we'd like to do now is send a representative along to each executive meeting to do that if there's anything in particular. Unfortunately, Mark's got COVID, Mark Pengelly, the chair, so I'm stepping in for him. We wanted to speak on this item in particular because it was where the most detailed area of debate had taken place. The other issues are mainly being picked up in task and finish groups. So the committee was concerned about the sudden increase in excess of £20 per month for some residents in parts of the county in the north. And there were various suggestions put forward. One of them was that we look at, or ask you to look at, a phased introduction to be considered, which would actually ease these people into increasing their outgoings by £20 a month. The monitoring officer was at the meeting and explained that the opinion was that this would result in potentially claims of inequality, as there were different amounts being paid across the county, which was accepted by some, but some were still felt very strongly that this is something that should be considered, because it was actually done in Dorset when they had their local government reform. Also, Chris has picked up on this, it was put forward that a discretionary fund be looked at. I'm speaking on behalf of Mark and the committee, and he was very much for this. I actually wasn't, but there you go. But it was just really this concern about, in the short term, asking people to pay so much more money, that there should be some kind of safety net. And with that in view, what we did ask for is, what are the councils currently doing, the sovereign councils, to support people who struggle? Because we felt in the report there was just a very brief paragraph about, oh, we'll give them a bit of advice on debt. And that really wasn't enough for, we felt, for members to go out to their residents and explain what the support is. Now, we know that sovereign councils are doing some good work, but we asked for this back in October, and again at the last meeting, for some detail of what is currently being done to support people, and what will be carried forward into the new unitary. Because if you pass these recommendations, then members of the public are going to come to councillors with concerns, and it would be very good for us to know what we're currently doing that is good, and we know that there will be something. So we do look forward to receiving that as soon as possible. And I think that sums it up. There were questions about the validity of a consultation just having one option, but again, that was addressed in the meeting, but it was put across strongly. So my job is here to represent what was said at the Overview and Scrutiny meeting. So I do need to sort of raise the fact that that was brought up. So hopefully you'll consider some of those points, and look forward to presenting to you at the next executive meeting as well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Victoria. We'll look forward to it. I'd like to invite Lucy Hodgson to speak to this report. Lucy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So the purpose is to provide the Shadow Executive with analysis of the outcome of the Local Council Tax Support Scheme public consultation, and also provide updated information with regards to council tax support claimant caseload and expenditure, and hopefully this will enable you to make a decision on the council tax support scheme for North Northamptonshire for 21-22. As you may recall, a task and finish group was set up to oversee the introduction and the development of a council tax support scheme for the whole of the New Northants area. And the task and finish group met through July and August, and they received details of the existing schemes as to give them a thorough understanding of what was already in place, the various options they could take to amend the scheme, and the financial implications of any proposed changes for the new authority, the wider North Northants residents, and particularly those in receipt of council tax support. And I think Councillor Jenny will concur with me here that the amount of information provided to members for them to enable to propose a scheme for consultation was very in-depth. Anything that the members asked for, we were able to provide, financials and such, so they're very well informed on their decision making. At 3.6, it gives an outline of the scheme that was proposed for consultation, and you may recall that at the Shadow Exec meeting on the 8th of October, you approved an 8-week consultation on the scheme, and that was more than the statutory 6 weeks required, because yourselves and the Overview and Scrutiny Committee felt the need to consult longer than needed because of the impact that this could have. So it was welcomed by both committees. There's a list at 4.3 of the ways the consultation was communicated and promoted. And in total, we had 409 responses. And I think as local authorities, we've been doing consultations on council tax support since 2013. And that amount of responses is a really good response rate. Usually it doesn't generate a lot of responses at all. And I think what we did in particular was send out letters to all current working age council tax support recipients. And again, that was a request of this committee and the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. They wanted all current recipients to have a clear understanding of what the proposals were and how it would individually affect them. So along with the letter, we sent an information sheet. So depending on where you lived, it listed all the proposals and how in particular it would affect you, whether you're a Kettering, Corby, East Northants or Wellingborough resident. So you knew whether it was going to have a negative impact or no change or a positive impact. So that was made quite clear. I mean, we had a helpline advertised as well, you know, expecting this to generate a lot of calls because it is quite a complex subject for people to understand. And we actually only received 30 calls in the whole consultation period. And some of those were actually from pensioners just checking that it wouldn't affect them, you know, and such like that. So there wasn't any common theme that came through, but it was quite a low level response rate for help to understand it. As a part of the consultation, once the analysis and the results were in, we actually presented the analysis to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and that was on the 10th of December. And as Councillor Perry was here representing that committee, there was a few issues that required clarification. I just want to pick a few of those out because it is important for me to explain those. The Armed Forces Covenant, I think there was an understanding from some respondents that they were concerned that we weren't protecting them. Now, this isn't actually the case. What we did is all of the existing sovereign authorities ignore income that war veterans receive. So like war disabled pensions and war widows pensions. So the reason we didn't consult on it is because we all had that in our schemes already, and there was no way that we were going to change that. So that's just confirmed that war pensioners and such are still protected within this scheme. Another area was people thought that pensioners were affected, but pensioners are protected. The government writes a scheme for them, they are protected from any changes. So that's just confirmed that. And the other thing, as Councillor Perry said, was the money and debt advice provision. And yeah, it's just to give assurance that we all have got provisions in place, and these are quite varied. Some are internal provisions, some are external funded, and some are a mix of both. And it does vary across all of the authorities. But what we have got is a work stream working on that at the moment, reviewing what we do. But what we're going to keep in place is everything that we already do and roll that forward for at least the next year. So we've got time to look at what the best for North Northampton will be and our residents, and develop and shape that. So we're not going to provide any less. That's rolled forward, and it is very good work that is done already. And I mean, work is published on our sovereign websites about the results we do and such, because that's a lot to do with our service level agreement. So, but there is a lot of good work that already happens, and that will continue, but we'll look to enhance and develop that. And what the good thing is about bringing the 4 councils together is we've all got expertise in certain areas, we've all got good practices, you know, we can develop and really make something good. So that is something we commit to and we will be working on. Moving on, the analysis of the consultation responses can be found at Appendix 1. And like I said, there was 409 responses. And I won't go through each proposal because you would have read that and all the analysis. But there is a strong, there is a good support for all the proposals that we've made. And what we've done is we've grouped together the common themes, and we've actually put together, so you can see all of the comments that were made for transparency. You can see what people are thinking and the reasons behind, you know, the decisions and the proposals. And one interesting thing is on proposal 1, which is the contribution towards what people have got to pay towards their council tax. There were some people that disagreed with it, but they disagreed with it because they thought it was too low. And, you know, they thought it should be more than the 25%. So, you know, that's why we included all the responses, because sometimes it isn't clear whether people agree or disagree, what they're actually, you know, the thinking behind it is. So we've put that in there as well. With the resources and financial implications, obviously you already previously advised that the council tax support cost for 2021 was likely to be 15.7 million. And that was based on figures in June, which was once, you know, we were in the throes of COVID, and our caseload had increased because of that, because of people being furloughed and such. So what we said we'd do is obviously we'd have to come back and refresh those figures, because at that point we didn't know what was going to happen. You know, was furlough scheme going to end? Was the economy going to get back to normal and such? So those figures had been reviewed on December's caseload and expenditure. And although caseload has dropped slightly and expenditure slightly, the break-even point is still 24.9%. So we're still looking at a 25% scheme. Also, we've got to take into account the current, what's happening now. So caseloads might start increasing again. So I think we have to allow ourselves a buffer for that as well, because they're talking now that the furlough scheme might end at the end of April. Will it or won't it? When will the vaccinations be rolled out? When will things get back to normal? When will caseloads come down? It is a guessing game. We don't know, but I think we need to be, you know, safe in allowing that little buffer there. And just to say that if we don't do a cost neutral scheme, then any 1% deviation from the cost neutral scheme will cost the council approximately £109,000. So for example, if we decided on a 20% scheme, we'd have to find an extra 500, just over 500k. And we also need to take the, you know, the draft budget's also underway, so that is in the wider context of things as well. So the legal requirements are that we have to consult on a scheme before we make a decision on it, publish our draft scheme and such. And we have done all those things to comply with the legislation. Now, Councillor Perry did say about equalities and doing a phase scheme, and we have sought further legal advice on that, and I'll possibly hand over to Adele now so she can explain a bit further in depth what the outcome of that advice was.
Thank you, Lucy, for that.
Thank you, Lucy. So so I have provided advice recently, which does say that if it's practicable to do the to harmonise the scheme, then we should be doing that. I don't think there's any evidence that that's not practicable in this case. So in terms of equalities, because that was mentioned earlier on by the scrutiny chair, and I did give some advice within the scrutiny meeting. So if the draft scheme was implemented so that residents were to receive different levels of support based solely on their place of residence, then that fact, in absence of any evidence that the public sector equality duty had been met, would mean that it may be potentially discriminatory. That's something that we need to consider as we are debating tonight. And then also a failure to provide equal treatment to residents who may share the same protected characteristics is likely also to breach the equality duty. So we do have some equalities issues if we weren't to harmonise the scheme tonight, and also it's that issue about practicability that we also need to determine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Has anybody got any questions or comments to make? David Jenny.
Thank you, Leader. Well, this is the opportune time to express my grateful thanks to the members and officers who contributed to the Council Tax Harmonisation Task and Finish Group. This was always going to be a contentious piece of work, as whatever we did there would be some winners and some losers. The contributions made by Councillors Bell, Bundy, Stamborough and Wilkes were greatly appreciated, and the support provided by the officers, namely Barry Scarr, Glenn Hammonds, Lisa Hyde and Lucy Hoxton, was invaluable. With regard to the Council Tax Support Scheme, we agreed very early on to concentrate on harmonising the differences, so matters which all councils were currently in agreement were not debated. And Lucy's already highlighted things such as the Armed Forces Covenant and that sort of thing as far as that's concerned. These encompass subjects which hardship funds, and these will continue as before. And an aside, it is worth noting that in the government's financial settlement just before Christmas, more funding was made available, so it is reasonable to expect that we'll be in a position to alleviate severe hardship through our normal processes. Calculations were carried out to establish a cost-neutral budget scheme, and this was established to be a discount of 75%. Pensioners are exempt, and as with all council tax matters, calculations are based upon the Band D band. However, for the purposes of this matter, it should be noted that approximately 80% of the people affected are in Band A, and that less than 1% are in Band D and above. And therefore, I have some difficulty in reconciling mentally the calculation that Councillor Perry was talking about £20 a week. The majority of people will be nowhere near that. The public consultation was open for 8 weeks rather than 6. And looking at the questions that came back, that was a major piece of work, putting together all of those consultation results. But the long and the short of it is that all of the proposals that we're putting through were received in a very positive light. I think there was only one that was less than 50%, and that was about 48 or 49%. So that was really, really good. And I just want to also support what Adele has just said about harmonisation over more than 1 year. I think it would be morally wrong to have different rates in different parts of the council area, and I do believe quite seriously that if we were to do that, we would be open to a legal challenge, and that is not something that obviously we could support. And once again, I'd like to thank everybody involved. I confirm at the appropriate time, we're very pleased to propose that these consulted matters be included within next year's budget. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, David. Jean Addison. Jean.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm very disappointed on the insistence that the council tax harmonisation comes in from day one. This will impact on many of our residents across the unitary, Chair, not just those currently in receipt of any discount. In this current climate, many people who would not have been in financial difficulties, you know, in employment, etc., will now be impacted quite badly, and this will just add to their financial discomfort. As Councillor Perry's already stated, Bournemouth, for example, harmonised over 24 months, and they regarded that as the fairest way forward for their residents. If the executive insists on pushing through harmonisation on day one, they should strongly consider putting in place a discretionary fund to help support our less well-off residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jean, for that. Tom Beattie. Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with what Jean has just said. So I won't repeat that. I do take David's point about this being a contentious matter, which it clearly is and always was going to be. And I listened to both Chris and Victoria make their points. The fact is that the people in Corby, for instance, will be paying 3 times more than they currently pay with this proposal 1. And I find that hard to take, particularly as we're looking at within the wider budget of 5% almost council tax increase, plus any precepting which may come in from Police and Crime and Fire Commissioner and elsewhere. So the council tax burden is going to increase, I think, quite significantly. Now, I know this is a very difficult matter, but I listened to Lucy about the response, and I do take the point about over 400 people responding to a consultation is good. And I have to say that in our own budget consultations in Corby over the years, we'd be lucky if we got into double figures in answers to responses, but it's still quite a low figure when you consider the number of people that Northamptonshire Council will be responsible for. And I do also take the point, I think that Lucy made, that not everybody who was opposed to Proposal 1 wanted to lower the rate, but some were in favour of a higher rate. I mean, looking at the results of the consultation, also, it's clear that the Corby residents were opposed. A majority were opposed to the Proposal 1, and I think there's a bit of a double whammy here in that that people are being asked almost to pay additional council tax, including what Janice referred to earlier in relation to rental increases as well for housing. So there's quite a significant spike, I think, in costs. And whilst I recognise that as a member of Northamptonshire Council, it's my duty to represent the whole of Northamptonshire. I'm still an elected member of Corby Borough Council, and I really, in all conscience, cannot support this proposal tonight. And I think we're being asked as an executive to do that. And I just want to make it clear that because of the reasons given, that I'll be voting against.
Got the screen frozen. Tom, we didn't quite hear the last sentence. Could you say it again? Because your screen froze.
Right, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Yeah. Sorry, Ross, it says my internet connection is unstable, but I don't know if you can still hear me. I think the final point I made was that for all the reasons I gave, I wouldn't be able to vote in favour of this proposal tonight, so I'll be voting against.
Okay, thanks for that, Tom. Ian Jelly?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And yeah, I can fully understand and my colleagues' concerns about this going forward. And as David said, you know, before, this was going to be a very contentious issue. I won't go over what I was going to say because people already said that, but I think from the council's point of view, and going back to what Rob said earlier about communication, it's about making sure that we communicate with our residents, whoever they are. And what I would ask or propose or suggest is that when the council tax bills go out, we actually have a document in it, a form, a letter that points to all of the residents who are claimants of this, of all the areas of support that we can actually direct them to, signpost them to, with all the contact information. And likewise, in the future, if we do come up with anything else, if we start looking at areas where we can financially support people, that we communicate to all of these people. I think we have to be aware of the impact of our decisions on certain residents in the new unitary. And I think as long as we're aware of that and we make the residents aware of, you know, the difficulty that we have as well making these decisions, and we communicate it well, then we can support these people. So that's you know, whether it's a proposal or a request, that we consider doing that when we actually put the bills out. But and that's all really I want to say on it, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. I think we are communicating and increasingly communicating as Northamptonshire Council. We do need to, on a constant basis, we need to get the message out to people of what services we offer. And we do offer some, I think Lucy was quite right when she said that we offer some comprehensive services, and that when they come together, they'll be greater than the single sum. But anyway, does anybody else want to say anything or ask a question? Jason?
I'd just like to sort of comment really. This was never going to be an easy decision. It was never going to be a simple process to get done. The Task and Finish groups worked well and hard on this. I think doing this, and I use the expressions, doing it all over the first year straight away is probably the only way forward. There is always going to be winners and losers in scenarios like this. But I think the way forward is to get this done and demonstrate to the people of Northamptonshire what we're going to do with the revenues that are raised and how we're going to spend that wisely for them.
Thank you for that, Jason. With nobody else wishing to say anything or comment, can I have a mover?
Yeah, that was me, Chairman. Leader Rather.
Jenny, and a seconder.
Happy to.
Jason. So a mover and a seconder. Could I have a show of hands, please? 4.
Chair, that is 7 votes in favour.
Any abstentions?
That's 0 abstentions.
And against?
And that's 2 against. So altogether, 7 in favour, 2 against, and no abstentions.
That's carried, but it's duly noted. Thank you for that. I can confirm that there is one exempt and urgent item for consideration at this meeting. I therefore propose to exclude the public and press from the meeting during the consideration of the following item of business: website supplier award, in accordance with section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, because exempt information may be disclosed. So I'd like to thank all the public for coming at this stage.
Chair, you just need to formally approve that, move into exempt
All
list.
Yes.
Sorry.
You need a mover.
Can I have a mover for that?
Move, Chair.
Stephen, move, and Tom Beattie seconds. Can I have a show of hands?
Okay, that's all in favour. I shall now close down the live feed before we proceed.